This is the Bama Podcast with Marty Solomon. I'm his co-host, Brent Billings. Today we venture further into our review of The Chosen with a discussion on the 4th episode of Season 2.
We're here. I don't know if there's anything to say.
The perfect opportunity, apparently.
And I'm thoroughly curious with this episode, Brent, what you're going to do, because the episode starts with the credits. So how will you do the spoiler horn? I'm just waiting to see what your plan is here.
Oh, it doesn't start with the credits. That was the last episode.
Oh, that was the last episode. How dare I forget these things? Do I even have the right notes up? Goodness gracious.
Yeah, the 3 and the 4,
this has a great opening scene. I forgot about that. All right, I'll quit talking now and let you run the show, because apparently I am incompetent at doing this.
Okay, well, spoiler horn it is then. So it starts with this 10-minute montage scene with no dialogue, and apparently some people did not get it when they originally aired it, and Dallas was fielding comments in the live stream. Hey, I'm not hearing them talk. Is something wrong? Blah, blah, blah. Which, man, I mean, it is a 10-minute scene, so I kind of get it, but I just think back to when The Last Jedi was in theaters, and after opening weekend, all of the movie theaters had to put up signs warning people that there's a single shot for like a couple of seconds in the middle of the movie where there's no sound at all, which is an incredible shot. I think it might be one of the best shots of all time in Star Wars. Yep. And I'm like, how do you even have the time to think that something is wrong before that shot is over?
Yep. People, so, Brent Billings, anyway, people.
Art. It's art. It's tough. I know I don't get a lot of art, but it's art. Anyway.
Art meets the human spirit. That's what it is.
I guess. Art meets our modern culture where everything is 1,000 miles per hour all the time. There's no silence. There's no solitude. There's no breaks in the noise. Anyway.
I did love in that scene that we're referring to, by the way, I won't reference it because it would be a spoiler, but the presentation of the knife as it will become relevant later in the season was fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
I did love that very much. I obviously didn't catch that the first time because I didn't know it was coming, but on the second watch, I was like, oh, it's so great.
So, quick summary. We see this boy climbing a tree. He falls out of the tree. He's apparently paralyzed. His parents take him to initially to a doctor to verify, what's going on. And then they take him to some sort of healing person who's like, I don't know, doing a bunch of stuff that apparently doesn't work because you see him again in the same condition. And then he watches his mom die in childbirth. And then you see him caring for his baby brother. Eventually a new mom comes into the picture. I don't think we actually really see much of her again after that initial entry.
No.
But this guy is just watching his brother growing up. He's playing with others, but we do see the younger brother include his older brother. And so they just have this great relationship. And then one day he wakes up and his younger brother has disappeared, left a note. Says he's gone off to become a zealot.
Can you see that in the montage? You don't see that originally.
You don't know that until later.
Okay.
But you see him. You see the younger brother talking with some people. That's where that exchange happens. That is the knife. And you see them watching some Roman soldiers beating up on some people in the streets for who knows whatever reason. But anyway, so the older brother ends up at the pool of Bethesda, and you see the water stirring up in the way that they've chosen to portray it, and there's total chaos as everyone is jumping in. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. If they actually believed that the first person into the water is the one who gets healed, there are some people jumping in way, way later than that. So that's kind of funny. But then, so then you see the younger brother and he's training with the zealots. Again, we don't actually know that these are the zealots yet, but he's going through all these drills. And then you just see cycling back and forth between scenes of the older brother being too late getting into the pool, and then back to the zealot training. You see both of them growing older, and you can tell that some time has been passing.
Yeah, and the knife presentation that I was talking about is at the very end of that, where he's finally like initiated as a zealot, and there's this scene where they give him very formally his Siccar dagger,
right?
And that was the part that I thought, oh, how wonderful.
Yes. I guess I don't know for sure. Then I was thinking you were talking about that scene where he was talking to the like 3 other guys in that market, and they were handing him like a folded up piece of cloth.
Yeah, I knew when you mentioned that, I was like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about, but that wasn't what I was thinking about. Nope.
Okay, well, who knows? So I don't know if you want to talk about at this point the pool as far as like how it is stirred up and how that's portrayed, but that was definitely a portrayal that would lean towards the interpretation that we've talked about.
I mean, if you didn't know, and even later in the episode, Jesus will hint at, one day they'll figure it out and they'll tell everybody. And I'm not even sure. I wouldn't really quote me with. I don't have a source to quote on that. I just have this vague but clear memory. Does that make sense? Vague but clear. Memory of being taught that. So, I mean, don't quote me without doing a little bit more research on that, but that's my understanding of what was happening at the pool. And if that's the case, then this bubbling, like, I'm sure if you didn't know that, you were like, oh man, that's how they're going to portray the pool. And yet, historically speaking, if this theory we've espoused is correct, then that would be a great, like, that's the image that I imagined in my head even before The Chosen aired. So I really like that. Now, the pool itself there is a bunch of debate about the pool of Bethesda, and whether it's the pool of Bethesda, or is it the pool of Bethsaida, or is it like, which pool is it? And there's a huge debate and scholarship of that. I think that debate has cooled down quite a bit of recent, when they just continue to do more archaeological digs at what's, currently today the pool of Bethesda. But that I feel like the pool that's represented there would not at all be. I mean, there could be something I'm not aware of, and they may be taking the position that it's not the pool of Bethesda. I'm not necessarily sure. Everything else that's going to happen in the episode is perfect, in my mind. But the shape of the pool, the aesthetics of the pool, like what it looks like, and it would have just been a much larger. We're going to try to find, I'm pretty sure I have a diagram buried somewhere. We're going to try to find an artist's, do you call it rendition? An artist's depiction?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, either way.
Of what the pool of Bethesda looked like. Talks about 5 covered colonnades, which I feel like are missing in the, John mentions that directly. I feel like it's missing in the Chosen episode, but and we kind of found a pool that had those 5 covered colonnades. It's right in the right spot. It's the pool of Bethesda. It's exactly what it should be. So we'll try to get an image, a depiction of what that pool could have, should have, maybe looked like. But that was my only issue with that. Everything else I love about how they've depicted that, and all the other comments throughout the rest of the episode are going to be so spot on. But I will gush over those later.
Yeah, I'm assuming that the scale of the pool is just a production or a budget sort of reality, and not necessarily.
Yep.
It's hard to say.
Yep.
But yeah, we did talk about this story. I mean, just we're in this kind of weird spot where the part of The Chosen that we're going through, and we didn't really map this out specifically to have this happen, but just a few episodes ago in 261, we talked about this story with Kevin Chandler. And have we talked about this story elsewhere in the podcast, or am I just remembering just side conversations?
I think you're remembering the trip.
Oh, from the trip.
Yeah, no, I think you remember. I mean, we visit this site on the trip. Great
It's
promo.
true.
Come join us.
Okay.
I'll take you right there. But yeah, and yep, I think that might be it's in your memory.
Yeah, my memory is, it's hard to keep things straight sometimes, So anyway, after the montage, we do have the credits at this point. Then coming out of there, we see this, what we learn shortly to be a staged zealot drill, We see that the younger brother turns out to be Simon, Simon the Zealot, and I will in the live stream they're referring to him as Simon Z, which I did not do in my notes, but I'll try to make a distinction between him and Simon Peter, whose name has not changed yet. So I've been trying to respect that and call him Simon at this point. But
I've noticed that you've done a good job with that. I have not, and I'm just like Peter. So I'm glad you've been much more committed than me.
Well, we'll see. I may have to diverge from that because this could get confusing. So then we see Atticus is watching this whole thing happen from above in the bushes, and I realized the first time around, I was like, I do not understand. Like, this guy seems sort of familiar. I realized this time that his voice reminds me a little bit of Mark Driscoll, which is, I don't know what that says, but I think that's what's going through my mind. So I don't know if anyone else thinks that.
How dare you?
Yeah. Please let me know if that's if anyone else is thinking that, or if I'm just crazy. So then we see two men discussing this plot, and one of them is talking about Simon. We learn that he's been in training for 3 years, and they have this plot to kill a Roman magistrate, and they're hoping that will lead to problems and hopefully an arrest of Caiaphas. Not a whole lot of talk about him, but just, dropping that little seed of Caiaphas and what his influence is in the area. And then we see the disciples building a shelter for the Feast of Tabernacles, or Sukkot.
A sukkah. They're building a sukkah.
A sukkah. There you go. And Mary says that she's never been to Jerusalem for whatever reason. She kind of explains that. And Matthew is learning about the festivals. And I would imagine that Matthew knows like some things about it. But as we saw previously, like he didn't really have any friends. Like he doesn't participate with his family or anyone when these festivals happen. And so there's a lot of details that he does not know about. So, which is good because then we get to learn too.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. A little bit later in that episode when Mary has her comment about, why is it only the men that go for these festivals 3 times a year? And Simon Peter, Simon P. He responds with a very contextually correct and a little bit of like maybe a little bit of glossy, arrogant. I know the answers, kind of know it all, but also like, hey, women aren't prohibited either. So, and that's very true. Like women were not prohibited from making the journey. Like there were some kind of just general traditional cultural assumptions about the things that needed to be taken care of at the household and the safety of the journey. Like he's absolutely correct. And I appreciated that they put that line in there because like, man, if you had the opportunity, if you had the right circumstances of the situation, it wasn't that you weren't allowed, you could come. And that was cool that they pointed that out because that would be very true. But I like that. I like that they're not missing opportunities to talk about those dynamics. It's really cool.
Yeah. So next up we see Simon meeting with that man from earlier, discussing the plot against the magistrate, and goes over the whole deal with him. And there's a little bit of a like twinge where he says that they'll meet up. Simon will meet up with his brother in Jerusalem, and he's like, "My brother? What?" And he's just talking about another zealot as a brother.
Right. Yep.
But you see that first little hint where he's like, "Oh, I gotta deal with this now." But ultimately Simon's told, like, if you either carry this order out as we've described it to you or never come back here. So then he's exiting the building, and there's a group of zealots in a room reciting Zephaniah 3. And I was looking up what the reference was. And I'm reading on. I'm like, oh my gosh, is the Chosen doing a remez? Well, it turns out later in the episode they actually go on with the text, and it's like, okay. But I was like, man, if they're actually doing this as a remez, I was like, that's so cool. Yeah. But alas, you'll get the rest of the text later. So then we see Shmuel in Jerusalem. He's wandering around the market. He's got another Pharisee with him named Yanni. who I believe will be showing up more often. And they're looking for a place for him to set up and preach about false prophecy. And Yanni says a blessing over him, and Shmuel stops him. He's like, well, wait a second. That's the blessing for life-threatening situations. And the guy's like, you'll be fine. I'm going to go get some breakfast. And so he walks off.
Yeah, I did love that. It was like there was a Pharisee that obviously is a part of the program, but also just has, I wouldn't call it humility. I don't know what the word is, but just more robust authenticity to what things are and what things are. And you're seeing Shmuel's like true colors come out. Like,
yeah,
he's now able to fly on his own. He's wanting to, that's not the tone he wants to take. That's not what he wants to do. He wants to start building this. He's got a platform to build in a message he's trying to spread about false teachers that we saw in season 1. But, and as I'm sitting here, by the way, your comment on Remezes, to give the Chosen credit, I feel like they also do a ton of that. I pick up on a ton of those little nuggets, and I'm totally surprised because they happen frequently enough that they can't be like, every now and then you're like, was that just a coincidence or did they just get lucky? But it's literally designed and dropped in there. So I do appreciate all the little just side I mean, I don't know if they're necessarily remezim, but there is just a lot of really textual just drop-ins all throughout these episodes, and it's been really cool to see that. They're very aware of that.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've ever watched The Wire, Marty, but Dallas meant you have not.
I have not.
Yeah, I haven't either. I always hear about it. I can't necessarily recommend it. It's an HBO show, so I'd imagine that it's probably not the cleanest show.
Well, that explains why I haven't seen it.
I don't know, though. I don't know. But anyway, Dallas mentioned that as he was developing some of the ideas for The Chosen, he was watching through that show.
Oh,
and
okay.
A lot of the like backroom dealing stuff that you see among the Pharisees, among the Zealots, among the all the different religious and political leaders have been influenced by that show. So I thought that was interesting.
Oh, very interesting. I can see that. Okay, cool.
So then we see that the older brother from our opening scene his name is Jesse. He's still at the pool at this point. Another scene of him being too late to get in. He's like down on the third step up, and I'm thinking like, why is he not just like toes hovering above the water? But I mean, not toes necessarily. Yep. I guess it would probably be his hands, but like why is he? He's definitely closer than he has been previously, but why is he not just like right there? I don't know. But another man, Jesse's kind of like giving up. He's like, I'm never going to make it. And the other guy comes up to me. He's like, well, why are you even still here? Like, if you don't have any hope, then what is the point? And he's like, I don't know. So then we see Simon arriving at Jerusalem, and he's walking past several men being crucified, and he's getting screened as he's going into the city, and asks about the crime of the man being crucified. And he's like, oh, he's being crucified for murder. It's like, okay. So
yeah, not quite the word I don't think they would have used, because that was, I mean, crucifixion was used very publicly to make an absolute point. I think they would have said terrorism or insurgents or whatever I'm sure they would have maybe used different words, but not just the crime of murder. Like, that doesn't get you crucified, but a very particular kind of rebellion meant for punks like you. Not that the soldier knows this at this point, but right.
Yeah. And so we see Atticus sneaking around a little bit. Some Roman soldiers take notice of him, and they mention he's part of the cohort urbane, which I did not look up, but I assume that is some kind of historical Roman thing.
Yeah, I was fascinated the first time I watched this episode and didn't know about some of these ideas, but yep. Even I'm learning things historically from The Chosen. How about that?
I forgot to look into it, so people can check that out if they're interested. Then we see Thomas and Nathaniel come from the market. They find Shmuel preaching, and he's doing his false prophecy thing. Matthew comes around the other corner and finds them, and he's like, hey, this Shmuel guy, he's not friendly to us. And what is it? Nathaniel says something about the odds of running into him here. And both Thomas and Matthew are calculating in their heads the odds. And
before that, he gives them they're talking about how much they despise Matthew, and Nathaniel's like, well, you're kind of the same person. To which you can see Thomas take this deep offense to, how dare you? And so that was great when he starts doing the same thing.
Yeah. So Nathaniel's ribbing him for that. It's great. So then we see Simon, and he's being followed by Atticus. He enters a place, and Atticus is looking around, notices that there's the light that Simon was carrying is wandering around under the street in a tunnel or a sewer or something. And then we see Simon being briefed on the magistrate's movements and what resources they have and everything else. And then he leaves.
They've done a good job depicting the zealots, I feel like. Especially this episode, maybe better than any others for obvious reasons, but just did a great job depicting who they were, the kind of training and or, whatever you want to call those, compounds or villages that they're from. Yeah, this really, they depicted that well.
Yeah, so then Nathaniel is back at the campsite or whatever where they're setting up their sukkah, and he's advising the other disciples on how to construct it, doing his architecture thing. And then we see Simon getting his things into place, setting up all the things he needs for his diversion. And then we're back to the disciples, and they celebrate finishing the construction of their sukkah, and they begin Shabbat. And this is another, and I guess I didn't mention this earlier. I was watching the reaction episode that they've got on the Chosen YouTube channel, where Dallas is talking about this episode. And he said that when they set this up, they built 3 of those booths, but then there's a wide shot of the scene, and there's dozens of these sukkahs all over the place, which they added later with visual effects. And I'm like, such a perfect use of visual effects, just like subtle, like adds to the story. And their idea was like, we want to show that like Jesus is not doing this weird thing. Like literally everybody's doing this. Everybody's in these booths.
Yep.
So then Matthew's continuing to learn about the meaning of Sukkot, and Jesus makes a comment to Nathaniel that the beauty of the booth is itself an act of worship, which I thought was a great line. I don't know if they're specifically calling back to Exodus 31, where the guys building the tabernacle are filled with the Spirit.
Ooh, yeah, good grab, Brent Billings. Yeah, bringing the text. I love that line too. I thought that was. I mean, that's going to be right down Impact's alley too. There's going to come a day where we're going to talk about Bema and Impact. We're going to do an episode on the sanctity of vocation and this idea of the things that we do vocationally being about the proper ordering and stewarding of God's creation, and how we need to recapture that. That's one of the biggest, one of our big initiatives at Impact Campus Ministries to work on. So someday we're going to talk about that. We haven't done it on the podcast. We're probably about 200 episodes too late, but we will be having that conversation. We have some great friends, by the way. We'll give a little plug. 100-fold. We got some friends out at 100-fold. They're an organization of Christian architects, and I think of them every time I see Nathaniel's character, and especially in this episode, because I got to join them for one of their gatherings they had, what they call their winter studio, and to hear them talk about how architecture is an act of worship for them. It's not just a 9 to 5. It's not just, it's not just secular work. It's sacred work, and it's holy. And man, what a step ahead that group is. So pretty cool. If you're an architect out there, you could look them up, get connected. Pretty great crew out there.
I'll put it in the show notes if anyone's interested.
Woohoo!
So then we have Big James, and he's asking about Zechariah 14, where the nations come into Jerusalem, and then it says that they are celebrating Sukkot, and he's like, what in the world is going on here? Gentiles sitting at the same table with us, celebrating the same feast as us? What is going on? Which, like, man, what a great question, and to bring the text into it, and
and Jesus' response: something will have to change.
Mm-hmm.
This is crazy. And he just has a smirk on his face, like something. And obviously you could see that smirk with a whole bunch of cheese. I prefer not to. I see it with like Jesus saying, yes, this is a really good question. And I could just tell you the answer, but I also know as rabbi, you're not ready for that yet. So that thing that's going to have to change is going to also have to do with you, disciples. It's not just the world that needs to change, but there's a lot that's going to need to change. So I really, and then he just reiterates through that conversation. Jesus keeps talking about everyone being a part, everyone being invited, everyone, and all the comments that get made. And the disciples are picking up on it, which I also love. It's not like they're just dumb and not like they instigated the conversation. They picked up on that theme. They continue to ask him about it. They hear him talking about it. I just love that. It's great. Great part of the episode.
Well, and I did not read that smirk as cheesy at all. And as we discussed recently on Slack with some people, I am very sensitive to cheese. So
that's right.
Yeah, no, the acting is just superb. I cannot say enough about it. So then we see Simon Peter and John come to Jesus and warn him about Shmuel. And Jesus is like, well, I'm going to Jerusalem tomorrow. Why don't you guys come along with me and maybe bring Matthew too? It'll be good for him. And I'm thinking like, yeah, and it'll be good for Simon and John to have to spend some time with Matthew.
That's right.
Sneaky rabbi. I love it. So then we're back to Simon the Zealot, and he's standing in a small crowd, listening to someone reading, and the reading happens to be Zephaniah 3. We're back to that. And this is that text. So there's not a whole lot going on in what the Zealots are reciting previously, but then that passage goes on and says, I will remove from you all who mourn over the loss of your appointed festivals, which is a burden and reproach for you. At that time, I will deal with all who oppressed you. I will rescue the lame. I will gather the exiles. So we've got the festival theme, we've got the Roman oppression theme, and we've got the healing of, or the rescuing at least, of the lame, which all fits perfectly into this episode.
He seems to like not want to hang around and listen to that. He kind of turns around and walks away from the group as they're finishing up. Like, ugh.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And the subtitles misattributed the passage to Zechariah rather than Zephaniah, which I thought was funny. He does actually say Zephaniah, but then the subtitles got it wrong. So, whoops. So then we have Simon. He goes up on the wall and he's looking out at the men who've been crucified. And I was thinking, as I watched that he's thinking like, oh, those dirty Romans are persecuting our people and I'm about to get them. But Dallas was saying, the other side of that perspective is he was looking at them and considering like, okay, am I really willing to go through with what I'm about to do at risk of having that happen to me?
Yep.
So, and it's probably a little bit of both, I would imagine.
Yeah, you definitely could see that. I took it more the way that Dallas portrayed it, but how could it not be a little bit of everything?
Yeah. And I'm mostly basing that off of the opening montage where he sees the Romans just senselessly beating up on people in the streets.
Yep.
And that's kind of like where it seems like he decides he's going to commit his life to doing something about that. I don't know.
Yep.
So then we see Jesus walking with Simon and Matthew and John, and they're discussing the pool of Bethesda and all of the meaning behind it and the origins of it and whatever.
They just nailed it, by the way. Man, they nailed it. I was just like, so history of the pool is pagan. The theory about hot vapor, which is totally connected. They even talked about Asclepius.
Yeah.
Brent Billings.
Yeah.
I was just so like, wow. Like they nailed like every piece of context that Bema talks about in session 4. And I was like, man, I'm just blown away. This whole season will continue to just blow my mind with the historical work they've done. I keep expecting them to like let their foot off the gas and just kind of like start to coast, and they don't have to do this. And they continue to just bring in great historical context that is, in my opinion, super accurate, and I love it.
They have done their homework, no question. So then as they're walking into town, Jesus sees the place of crucifixion there, and he kind of slows down and kind of, has a little bit of an emotional moment, which I think would be true of anyone walking in. But obviously we have some foreknowledge of what Jesus is looking forward to.
Yep.
Looking forward to, yeah. Not exactly how I should probably phrase that. So then we see this man of some sort of wealth wandering around the market, and Atticus finds him, and he's like, what are you doing coming here looking like a senator? Like, you're drawing all the attention to us. And apparently this guy is one of the handlers for the magistrate, and Atticus is explaining the plot, and Atticus is kind of telling him he's an idiot because he doesn't mix up the routine of this guy. He's like, well, he wants what he wants. And he's like, well, that's fine. Just do everything that you're going to do. I'll be there, and I'm going to kill Simon in the act. And they're not going to be able to lift him up as some sort of martyr or anything like that, which is pretty devious, and would probably have worked if Simon had carried out with it in the end.
Yeah, and it depicts the zealot problem, right? And this isn't to just throw zealots under the bus. Everybody's got their pros and their cons that they're bringing to the table, and things that they struggle with and whatever. But I mean, that's the problem with redemptive violence, is it can always be answered with simply more redemptive violence. And no matter how sneaky, no matter how whatever, it's just going to be met by a counter move by the other side. And it will always be a vengeance oriented. So I really liked that exchange, because I thought it depicted, yep, this is the nature of things. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. And at the end of the day, it's just violent. The myth of redemptive violence.
Yep. And it always escalates. Like, there's this idea of like a proportional response, and that can go back and forth for a while, but eventually somebody's going to escalate, and then eventually it's just total destruction, So yeah, it never ends well. So then Simon goes to the pool and finds Jesse, who has apparently been waiting there for 25 years.
And this time you're saying Simon the Zealot, Simon Z.
Yeah, Simon the Zealot. And he talks about how the Zealots forbid them being at the pool because it's a cult. And Jesse's like, well, you're in your own cult.
Right.
But also, if they're forbidding it, like, why is he there now? Is it just because, like, I don't know. I guess because the guy previously mentioned his brother and he just couldn't get it off of his mind. And he's like, well, I need to go. He says later in the conversation, he's like, I didn't say goodbye the right way last time, so I need to do it this time. But they're arguing. They're each quoting their passages. Simon's like, yeah, there's a time for everything, quoting Ecclesiastes. The conversation does not go well. And Jesse's like,
you left me. You left all of us.
I left you to save you.
Do I look saved to you?
And it's just like, oh man, like,
Yep.
he needed his brother, and now here he is, waiting with no one to help him. Not that he even needs his brother to help him into the pool, but just he needed his brother, as a companion, as an encouragement, as whatever. Like, he needed his brother in that way, and he was left. So Jesse tries to convince Simon. He's like, I know you're here to do something. Please don't do it. And Jesse reads his own note back to him. He'd kept the note from all those years ago, including the passage from Zephaniah 3 in the note. And Simon just kind of turns his back to him and listens for a moment, but says goodbye, and he leaves. And then Simon goes to meet the other zealots, and he's looking really distracted. He says, they're like, hey, what's going on here? And he's like, oh, sorry, I'm just really focused. It's like the exact opposite of that. And he kind of gets himself together, changes his clothes, gathers his weapon, tucks it in, which I feel like the dagger was not hidden particularly well inside of his clothing. I don't know. I just feel like he was being maybe a little sloppy, obviously, because, he's not focused like he said he was. Yeah. Any comments on any of that part before I move into the last big scene?
Not in that scene. I think it was just more of the, great depiction of the zealots. I love how they're working it into the drama. I'm good. I like it.
Okay. So then we have Jesus arriving at the pool, and he looks around and he's like, oh, there's my guy. He's been here a really long time.
Oh, his quote. I got his quote. Here's his quote.
That's him. Who? Him. The one who's been here the longest. But doesn't belong.
I thought, what a great, because man, just what a great line. Because he's been here for, he'll say in the episode, 25 years. He's struggled with his condition. The text tells us 38 years, whatever, however long he sat there, years and years and years. And my mind would look at somebody like that and be like, well, they've been here so long, they've obviously learned how to belong. And Jesus doesn't see it that way. He sees through it. And he says, here's somebody who's been here longer than anybody else. And he doesn't belong here. And I loved that line. It's really great.
Yeah, I assume that the math is that he was whatever age he was, because he says he was almost 40, or Simon says he's almost 40.
Yeah, because, if he's, right. Yeah. Yep. No, you're right.
So because they depicted him being paralyzed as a young boy before Simon was even born. So then that, 13 years plus the 25 at the pool or whatever. So I think the math works out.
Yep.
So Jesus walks up to him and passes a group of Pharisees on the way over and acknowledges them. And Yanni's in that group. Shmuel is assumedly still off in the market preaching. But Yanni's there along with a few other guys. And then and I am wondering, like, why were the Pharisees actually there? And Dallas theorized in his video, like, oh, maybe they were kind of like beat cops, just kind of hanging around waiting for somebody to break the law.
Well, and see, that's where, I didn't even think about that question, Brent. That's a great question. If it's the actual pool of Bethesda, it's much more palatable for me. If it's just this pagan site pool as they're depicting it, I don't think they'd be there being beat cops. That's not they can be beat cops in a lot of other places. That would make a whole lot more sense if they're wanting to encourage people to not break Shabbat. However, if it's the pool of Bethesda as we understand it, I mean, that wasn't just it was a pagan location. It was also not a pagan location. It was where the priests would come and clean the sacrifices, and they would wash the sheep for sacrifice in the pools of Bethesda. So there would have been a lot of Jewish, and it's not that the area would have been unclean. And so you would have had, especially, I don't know if I have anything to back this up historically. I have always assumed that Pharisees would have congregated where the Judean priesthood would have done their work so that they could have overseen it from their perspective and made sure that their laws were followed, not just the Judean worldview. And then it totally makes sense to me that you have Pharisees there, maybe just, watching similar to the Christmas episode we did where we said maybe there's Pharisees checking the sacrifices according to their own laws and understandings before they take them to the priests. That kind of idea. That would make total sense to me.
Yeah. So then Jesus is talking with Jesse and, is asking him, do you want to be healed? And Jesse goes in to explain, I've been here for a long time. I don't have anybody to help me. Are you going to help me?
I love that Jesus is asking for permission, by the way. I love...
Oh, sure.
Not that will be the case in every single healing everywhere. That's not some consistent, but especially in the world we live in today, the fact that Jesus would take the time to ask him, is this something that you want? And is it something you're willing for me to do? I did, because that's the tone I hear him say it in the episode. But
yeah, definitely agree. And he's saying look, Jesse, you know that this pool is not what you're looking for. This does not have anything for you. And then brings it back around and asks the question again, do you want to be well? And John sort of gets that something crazy is happening and pulls out his book to start writing, which I always love when John's writing. Mm-hmm. But then Jesse starts laughing and John's just writing furiously. The Pharisees are starting to take notice of what's going on, and Jesse's slapping his legs and stuff, and then he stands up.
I do love the when he right before that healing takes place, the conversation they're having. Obviously the way they've chosen to portray it here in the episode does take more of, I think, back to our episode with Kevin and his take and how he hears it versus how I always assumed. And I had always assumed kind of like more of he's just got excuses, and they take more of that line as far as like but it's not heavy handed. It's not like he's just full of excuses and just, this lazy handout. Like it's very much, he's got this experience, which Jesus doesn't, in his response, he doesn't devalidate. Like, he's not like, no, that's a bad. He simply says, I know that he essentially alludes to, I know others have let you down. And I would parenthetically say, and they will continue to do so. I'm asking you right now about me and you. I know that God's people haven't shown up. I know that your brother has let you down. I know that the Jewish community has whatever, but I'm asking about me and you. And I thought, what a great moment in that episode where so many of us have experienced similar things, and Jesus wouldn't devalidate that. He would say, I know what you've been through. I know it's been super hard. I know that other people haven't treated you well. What I want to know right now is about me and you, and what's that look like? And I loved that moment.
Yeah, so Jesse is standing, and then at this point, and he goes and picks up his mat. The Pharisees come over and start talking to him about that.
Which I love. They just saw, like, what they just witnessed.
Yep.
And they come over, and they're immediately
what John is
like
arguing with them about.
Oh my goodness gracious. They're like, oh, the mat. I'm all obsessed. They just saw this dude stand up, and maybe they didn't realize it was the same guy. Maybe they don't know his 38-year story. But that, and the thing that they want to, and we talked about this in our episodes, that's the thing they want to hone in on. Like, that's the thing that they...
Well, yeah, I think if these are Pharisees, they're not going to typically be in Jerusalem so much that they would know him particularly well, I don't think.
Yeah, could be. There would definitely be Pharisees that would be in the South stationed there. I kind of like how the episodes do it, where they go there for like, almost like they're stationed there for a season. They're going to go spend some time down there, maybe for the festivals. So it's not their headquarters, but I would imagine they're probably down there for a good chunk of time.
Yeah. I think they also maybe insinuate that he was a plant, that he wasn't actually.
Oh, sure.
But, John's arguing with Yanni about this, turns out Jesus has already disappeared. And Matthew is like, John, we got to get out of here. And so they leave, and then Jesse's like, yeah, do whatever you want. I'll report this. I don't care, but I'm going to go find my brother. So he runs off.
And I love that I was just floored that the Chosen did this when they're discussing it. And is it Matthew that asks about breaking Shabbat? And John answers, they haven't broken Shabbat. They've broken their oral tradition. He just so cleanly, clearly, and directly states one of like our biggest arguments that we make in session 3 and session 4, but session 3 about the difference between the Torah and Torah observance and halakha and oral traditions. And that's not that oral tradition is all bad, but I love that he made such a clean distinction. I just was like, I can't believe they said that. So great.
Yeah. Oh man, I just love John so much for so many reasons. So then we see Simon is working to enact his plan. More subtle visual effects in this scene where they just made this market more immersive and more distinctive, which I thought was fun for the visual effects nerds out there. And then right at the last moment, like everything's happening, everybody's coming into place, all the pieces are in place, and then Simon sees Jesse walking and just like freezes and goes off and finds him, and all the other zealots are like, what just happened? We were right there. We almost had this thing done. And then they kind of scatter, and then Jesse turns around and sees Simon, and they embrace. And Atticus is watching this whole thing go down from beyond the burning cart. That fire they started as a diversion is still happening, and Atticus is standing behind it like, what just happened? Like, I know these people. Like, they don't just abandon their plans like this. So
right. He's
confused. Everyone's overwhelmed. And then, as they're leaving the city, Matthew's asking Jesus, why didn't you wait until after Shabbat to heal him? Like, he's been waiting for so long. He could have waited another 30 minutes. And Jesus says, sometimes you have to stir up the water. And then he kind of walks off with a smirk.
Slow motion mic drop moment.
Yep. Good stuff. Good end of the episode, man.
There you go. That was another good one. Another good one in season 2.
Yeah, long episode. Not as long on the Bama side for once.
All right.
We came
Success.
in shorter than the runtime of the Chosen episode. So I'll give ourselves little trophies for that.
That's right.
All right. Well, if you want to get a hold of Marty, you can find him on Twitter at Marty Solomon. I'm at EIBCB. And you can find more details about the show at BabeOnAssumption.com. Check out the show notes. We reference back to, if you've jumped ahead and you're listening to these episodes on The Chosen, we're going through the Gospel of John verse by verse right now. And so go back and check out episode 261 where we talk about this story. That's definitely a fun conversation. And then, of course, 100-Fold Studio for all the architects out there. And then Cohort Urbane, do some investigation on that for all the Roman history nerds. So thanks for joining us on the Bama Podcast this week. We will talk to you again soon.